Welcome to Ask Your Academic. Today's session will cover the MSc Human Nutrition, and we're joined by Dr. Alison Parrett, who is going to answer all the questions you have about the programme. If you've got any questions that are not relevant to the programme, so funding, accommodations, scholarships, things like that, I'm going to post some helpful links into the chat box that should cover off any questions you have about that sort of stuff. If you can't find the answer you're looking for there, we've got an online postgraduate event coming up on the 7th of May, and there'll be different sessions running, so that would be a good place to get those questions answered if you can't find the answer. We're also recording the session today, so don't panic. There'll be a lot of information shared. You will be able to go back and watch that afterwards. That link will be sent out in the next few days, so keep an eye on your inbox for that. So Alison, would you like to introduce yourself and give a bit of an overview of the programme?
Yeah, thanks, Naomi. So hello, I'm Dr. Alison Parrett. I'm the programme lead for Human Nutrition, MSc in Human Nutrition. This is a full-time programme that runs from September to September. It is an intense programme, and that's partly because it's an accredited programme. It's accredited by the Association for Nutrition, which is a body that makes sure that we meet the requirements that they think a nutritionist should have. So it's got an accreditation attached to it. There are 5 taught courses, a specialisation course, and then assuming that you pass everything, then you would move on to your project in the summer months, which is a 3-month project. So I mentioned the specialisation course. The project is linked to the specialisation course. So whatever specialisation you take, you will also do a project in that area. Hope that's a quick introduction.
Perfect. And we've been asked whereabouts the classes typically take place. Are they on main campus?
No, so most of the classes take place in the east end of Glasgow on the Glasgow Royal Infirmary site. So it's not very far from Glasgow. You can get across town on the train or on buses. It's actually not too far to walk even. So our nearest train station is High Street, and it's a 10-minute walk from High Street. So a lot of classes do take place at the Glasgow Royal Infirmary. In the first semester, in the early weeks of the first semester, some of the teaching does take place on campus because we use our special technological enhanced advanced learning rooms over on main campus.
Perfect. And I'm assuming that'll all become clear once students register and get their sort of...
Should all become clear, yeah.
Perfect. And I know there's no such thing as a typical week as an MSc student, but we're always asked, how many days should I expect to be on campus for classes? How many hours?
Okay, so I looked at your questions, and I just had a look at last year's timetable to try and get a full picture of it. And it is quite complicated because in semester 1, you're probably in 4 out of 5 days, but not every week. So some weeks there's 2 days, some weeks 3, sometimes 4. It's rarely 5 days, but we do try and spread the lectures so that you don't have a full day of teaching on one day, but we also make sure that you're not coming in just for one lecture. And then as we get through to second semester, and certainly towards your specialisation, then it generally becomes 2 days of teaching. And at most 3 days of teaching. The days that we're over in the main campus, we put all the teaching on main campus, and the days we're in the Royal Infirmary, put all the teaching in Royal Infirmary. So you're not having to go back and forth. We also have space at the Royal Infirmary if you've got an hour between lectures where you can work and study and catch up on other things.
Perfect. And I suppose it's worth saying that as much as you're maybe not on campus every day, you are expected to be doing work out with that. It's not just a 10 hours a week.
Yeah, it's definitely not 10 hours a week anyway, but it is self-directed learning. So there's quite a lot to do around the course, and then for assessments as well. You're expected to do some reading. And in the first 2 courses, we do what's called flip teaching. So we provide materials prior to the classes taking place, and then you come in and it's much more an interactive activity and discussion of what's already been posted on on the Moodle website. So there's always other things to do around the actual teaching sessions.
Perfect. And you mentioned the specialisms there. How do students go about choosing their specialism? Is that at the start, or is that through?
Okay, so we've got 4 specializations: the obesity and weight management, clinical nutrition, public health nutrition, and sports and exercise nutrition. What happens is that some students come and they know exactly what they want to do, and they have a specialization in mind. But some students come and really don't have an idea of what specialization they want to do. So we give you a bit of time to get settled into the program, and then in October we'll run what's called our specialization sessions, and these will be sessions by the specialization leads that will talk through the work involved in that specialization, what that specialization encompasses, and we'll talk through about the assessments and the types of projects you can go on to do in that specialization. Once you've had those talks, there's opportunity to ask questions of anyone to try and, you know, see what is better suited for where you're aspiring to be in your career. And there are certainly some people who, even though they've been dead set on something, then realise that actually for what they want to do, it may be a better specialisation that they should choose. So there's the opportunity then to, you know, ask all those questions, make sure you know exactly what each specialisation is, and then we ask you to fill in a form to say what specialisation you want to take. Now, generally, everyone gets their first specialisation. In all my years here doing the MSc, I think there's been 1 year when some people had to get their second choice, but it's rare that happens. Usually we have everyone gets what they want to do.
Perfect. I think that'll settle a few people's minds, because they don't have to know all the answers at the start of what they're doing and what they want to do.
Lots of people don't know all the answers, so it's good to get some nutrition knowledge to hear about things before you make those choices.
Perfect. We've also been asked, is there any practical work throughout the MSc?
Okay, there is bits and pieces of practical work. It's not a highly practical course. We are teaching you the theory of nutrition and trying to ensure that you have the background in nutrition to go out and become a nutritionist. And I mentioned the accreditation. There's certain competencies that we have to cover to get our accreditation, but some of that means that you do practicals. So there's some practicals that are lab-based practicals. There are practicals where you are looking at body composition and anthropometrical measurements, and you're doing those on each other, so you get the competency to be able to take those measurements. There are other practicals where you're designing a food frequency questionnaire to analyze intake of food in different people. So they're not all bench science practicals. They may be practical work of another nature. If you're particularly keen to do bench science, then the place to then increase the amount of science that you do and lab-based work that you do would be in the project, and there's opportunity then to do lab-based practicals.
Perfect. And talking about the project, can you tell us a wee bit more about that? So how do students go about choosing a topic, a supervisor?
Okay, so what happens, as I already said, the project is linked to the specialisation you've chosen. So around about January, all the specialisation leads will come up with projects that they know they will run that year. So this may be to do with their research or someone that they collaborate with their research. So there'll be a number of projects that they will list as these are the potential projects for, say, clinical nutrition, or these are potential projects for public health nutrition. The students are then given the opportunity to look at that list, contact the supervisor, which isn't always the specialisation lead, it may be someone else, another academic, and talk through what's involved in that project. So Once that's been done, we ask you to choose your top 5 from a list. So this year, I think we had 5 students in public health, and there were nearly 20 projects to choose from. So there's plenty of choice. And so you choose your top 5, and then we try and allocate sensibly. A couple of the projects may be people working in pairs. When that happens, you're always, whilst you might work in pairs, you would write it up separately and cover a different aspect of it. So your project is very individual. There is the opportunity to do community-based projects, lab-based projects, surveys. We do occasionally have systematic reviews or library-based projects. They're less usual for us. We tend to have much more hands-on practical work, be that in the lab or outside of the lab. And if students have a burning ambition to do a project that isn't on the list, we will talk to them about what that is and whether it's feasible. Sometimes students have burning ambitions to do something, but it's not feasible in the 3-month period. So then we'll talk about, in their area of interest, what it is feasible to do within the period of time for the project. So generally, people get a project they're happy with because there's plenty of them to choose from.
Perfect. And in terms of assessments and exams, can you tell us a wee bit about what students can expect?
Yeah, so there is a spread of assessments and exams. So for the first 2 courses that you come in, and I said was flipped teaching, those tend to be assessed by coursework. Now there are essays, blogs, some weekly short quizzes that take, say, an hour, and an overall MCQ at the end. There is also, I said about designing a food frequency questionnaire, there's also a validation of that food frequency questionnaire, and the coursework is based around that as well. So those are very heavily coursework based, 100% coursework on those 2 courses. When you get to the other core courses, so they are a mixture of exams and assessed work. The assessed work tends to be evidence-based essays. It may be a write-up of a practical. It may be a lab report. So it's very different, those different coursework assessments. And then the exams are usually at this time of year, even for semester 1, with from what we've heard from students previously, even our semester 1 courses are examined in the April-May diet because students don't have time to consider all the information that they've been taught and study for it and do the exam in the December diet. So we have those exams then. The specialization courses, 3 out of the 4 specializations are coursework and an exam, and public health nutrition is actually all coursework. And then obviously for the project, it's a report.
Perfect. A bit of a mix there. And we're always asked, students always ask what they can do to prepare for starting their MSc. Is there anything you would recommend?
I think just if you haven't got a nutrition background, so of the students we have on the programme, some people have done nutrition before and some have done either no nutrition but have got a science background or a little bit of nutrition within their science background. So, and that's about a 50-50 split. It doesn't matter how much nutrition you've done. It's a really good idea to start reading a basic nutrition book to get your fundamental nutrition knowledge in your head. In those first 2 courses that I've talked about, we do go through some of that fundamental knowledge. But if you've got a good idea of what's happening with like the nutrients, the basic nutrients, and nutrition concepts from reading a basic nutrition text, then that will stand you in good stead. I think the other thing that you should do to prepare yourselves is be aware of the hot topics of nutrition outside. So there's always nutrition in the media without fail. You do have to look at that through an evidence-based eye. So don't believe everything you read, but it's a good idea to start thinking about the kind of topics that are out there, what's important in nutrition just now, and so on and so forth. For the book, if anyone's interested, there is a book called Introduction to Human Nutrition by the Nutrition Society series, and it's edited by Gibney. And that's the book that we would generally say that's a good starting point, but it's not solely that book. That any good nutrition book will help you.
Perfect. And in terms of after graduation, what kind of careers do graduates tend to go into?
So again, it's very different depending on the students we've got. So some students come here and have been, particularly some of our international students, have been working in the field and have come to nutrition in Glasgow to get a more in-depth knowledge of a particular nutrition, and they're really coming here to focus on their specialization, but they're working in the field and they will go back to their field of work. Within people who have come straight through an undergraduate course and are now coming into their postgraduate masters, they go on and do different things. Now, this year, unusually, we have taken on 4 students from the cohort who are now working in human nutrition. So that sometimes happens, that just we've got a lot of research going on, and there may be opportunities to join that research. I'm not guaranteeing it. It was a very unusual year this year. But other people go on to do lifestyle coaching. They work as nutritionists in gyms. They do public health nutrition, nutrition development officers. So a lot of that is around some of the small projects, maybe looking at heart health or developing healthy eating for weaning or something like that. There are lots of startup companies that take on nutritionists. We've got some links to some of those. And during November, possibly a bit later than that, we've changed the time of it, we invite 4 of our alumni back to talk to you about careers and what they've gone on to do. So we have one from each specialization who come in and give a talk about where they've gone to and their career trajectory, so that you can hear about, or if you've done obesity and weight management, what have you gone on to do from there and how have you got to the point you are at now. So these are students who are usually more than 2 years out of the MSc, so maybe have had 1 or 2 jobs. Some are a bit further out and have had more jobs, and they will give you an overview of what jobs are out there and how they got those jobs and where they've gone on to from their first jobs, and top tips for trying to get where they want to be in their nutrition career.
That's a nice sort of real world experience, isn't it? Of
Yeah.
what they've done, what you're doing, and then what they've done.
Yeah.
And I suppose, do you have any advice for a new MSc student?
I think the main advice is it's very intense at the start. Everyone finds it a struggle. There's a lot of new material, and because our first 2 courses are flipped, people aren't necessarily used to having that approach to teaching, so they sometimes struggle with that. So I think try and do as much reading, as much of the background work as you can, engage with the program, and if you're struggling, then say immediately. So there are advisors of studies who are academics within the human nutrition unit who are there to help you, and I'm there to help you. So if you're struggling, I think, you know, in those first few weeks, tell us that you're struggling or that you're concerned about something, and then we can offer you the support to help you. And other than that, just to engage with the program. It's not it's not an easy program where you can just glide through and it's all okay. You do need to put the work in because it's master's level. You do need to do the reading around the subject, and it may seem overwhelming at times, but our students do tell us that it's worth it in the end. In terms of a couple of other points, I would say, if you've got a disability, make sure you get registered with disability as soon as you can, because that really helps for giving you flexibility and deadlines maybe, or extra time in exams and things like that. And it's better to get that done at the start than later on in the semester.
Perfect. And all that, all those links and details that Alison's mentioned, they should be in that chat box. But you will also receive regular emails from the central team with all that kind of advice and links. That's actually us covered off all the questions that we've had submitted beforehand. That is a lot of information in a really short space of time. And I think we've no other questions through our chat box. I think you have covered everything there. I don't know if there's anything you feel that we've not covered that you would like to take the time that we've got left to cover.
I think I'd just probably like to say that the accreditation is one of our unique selling points. So this is what makes the program quite intense, but it also makes you very marketable as a nutritionist. So more and more jobs now want you to become an accredited nutritionist or already have that in your background when you apply for the job. So how the program and the accreditation works is that you go through the program and we cover all the competencies expected of the Association for Nutrition. And then at the end of the program, you will then, once you've passed and you've graduated, you then apply, and it's a direct admission to the Association for Nutrition as a associate registrant. And then after 3 years, you can become a full registered Association for Nutrition member. What I would say is that for coursework, there's a grade that you have to pass to get the MSc, but for every piece of coursework, you have to pass it at a 40% level to cover the accreditation of the Association for Nutrition. So that means every single piece of coursework, whereas for the MSc, you can average things out for a course. For the accreditation, you need to pass every single piece of coursework. So it's as well to know that at the start. Now, if you are panicking about that, don't worry, there are opportunities for resits, I would say. And also there is another MSc program that if someone doesn't meet all the Association for Nutrition requirements, there is another nutrition program that you then graduate with. But it's very rare that that happens. Everyone comes out with their accreditation.
Perfect. And we've had a couple of questions submitted in the chat box here that we've got a couple of minutes so we can answer a couple of them. Someone's asked, with the clinical nutrition specialism, are there any opportunities for placements? And if not, could you potentially volunteer?
Okay, it's really hard. So back when I first started, which was over 20 years ago, we did have clinical placements in the hospitals. Because of our ethics that is required for clinical placements, it has been harder and harder to place MSc students in hospitals, or even to get them to have ward rounds, which we used to do, where they'd go on with a clinician on the wards. So I would say there are a few opportunities. It's always worth asking or volunteering, and there may be something that is possible to do. There may be something that's possible to do in your project period as well, where you're more heavily involved with clinical placements as such, or with a clinician where you're involved in day-to-day clinical things. But it's not common, is what I'm going to say.
Sure. And someone's asked, it's about graduate roles, which you've kind of touched on, but specifically the sports nutrition specialism. What kind of jobs you find students going to do with that?
Yeah, sports nutrition is quite a difficult one because some people have gone on to do roles within sports clubs, but they possibly need some sports science background. So we do have students who are doing the sports and exercise nutrition. They've done sports science as their undergraduate degree, and they're doing this as their master's degree. And then they can go and work in sports clubs. And we have had students go and work in with Scottish Rugby or in the Institute for Sport Scotland. But if you haven't got the sports science background, that may be more difficult. So if you've just done sports and exercise nutrition, a lot of our students go on to do lifestyle coaching and nutrition coaching within private gyms. I didn't mention when I was talking about careers, a lot of our students go on to do further research, so go on to do PhDs, either in Glasgow, nationally or internationally. So some of our sports and exercise students do that. And others go on to do a vocational degree. So sports and exercise, I'm thinking of particularly, will go on and do physiotherapy maybe. The clinical maybe go on and do a dietetics degree, because dietetics is different from nutrition. So that's sort of where our sports and exercise people go on to.
Perfect. And then you did touch a bit about this in an earlier question, so it's maybe that they've joined a bit later, but what opportunities exist for hands-on experience within the programme, such as working in performance labs or with athletic teams?
So again, there isn't so much opportunity for that within the core courses, or it doesn't happen within the core courses. There isn't really much opportunity for that in the specialization course. And again, it comes down to the time available and the fact that this is a theoretical evidence-based course rather than a practical course. But there may be opportunities for that once you get to your project, and that there may be opportunities that you can work with a team. It does depend year to year whether we have those opportunities or not, but it's a possibility.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, that is all our questions, and we are just about at the end of our time there. So you've covered loads in such a short space of time. So like I said, we will be sharing the recording, so don't panic if you missed anything. That will be shared in the next few days. So thanks very much, Alison, for taking the time to join us. Thanks to our panel for registering and joining us too. And hopefully we'll see you all in September. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.